Here's the Battle of Bunker Hill. Bunch of white guys, right? Unless you know where to look. Like he's a hero there. He looks like he's cowering behind the white guy with a sword. He was the hero of the battle. And he saved scores of American lives that day. Look here. African American. Helping row the boat across. You know what his name was? Prince Whipple. He fought alongside Washington during the Revolution. Take a look at this one. This painting of, this is the Marquis de Lafayette. If you look at this, you just think, oh yeah, and then he made his slave dress up like I don't know what. Important. This guy may have won the Revolutionary War. James Armistead was his name. How did he win the Revolutionary War? Double spy. I'm going to let David tell the story here in a minute, but basically the Brits thought that he was spying for them, but he was spying for General Washington. He'd give the Brits bad intel and reveal the good critical information to General Washington.
This painting is done, and all the way up until the 1980s, we knew that that was Peter Salem, the hero of Bunker Hill. 1980s, the professors got together and said, oh no, that's not Peter Salem. We think that that's Grosvenor's slave is who that is. It's not Peter Salem.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, in the 80s, they changed that from Peter Salem to Grosvenor's slave, Esau. And that's what they say, oh no, it's not Peter, it's Esau, Grosvenor, it's his slave. How come the guy who that 10 years ahead, he was able to predict to the minute solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, 10 years before they happened? I mean, by watching the motion through a telescope, unbelievable what the guy did. He once took the back off a pocket watch, saw how it worked, went home and carved a wooden clock with all the gears, mainspring, and it was accurate to within 1 minute a year. A wooden clock the guy did.
Cow.
He's the guy who laid out Washington, D.C. He's the surveyor who did all that. He's a brilliant mathematician. Jefferson gave him.
Never knew this.
No. Jefferson gave him as an example to France. Said, "Hey, you guys in France think that blacks are inferior. Here's Benjamin Banneker."
Okay, first representatives, I asked, when did we have our first black Speaker of the House? When did we have the first Speaker of the House? 1789. When did we have our first black Speaker of the House? I bet most people would say never.
Never, except it was right here. Joseph Hayne Rainey. Joseph Hayne Rainey of South Carolina is the first black to preside over the House of Representatives. These are the first 7 blacks elected to Congress. You have here Senator Hiram Rhodes Revels, the first black U.S. senator elected. He was a minister of the gospel. He was a missionary. He worked with Frederick Douglass. He recruited 3 regiments of black soldiers in the Civil War, and he was a missionary to slaves in the South. You have here Benjamin Turner, Josiah Wall, this guy right here is really cool. Robert Brown Elliott is probably the most brilliant guy of that era. He actually took on the vice president of the Confederacy in a debate on the floor and just tore his head off. The racist Alexander Stephens. It was a great debate.
When did we turn? Were these guys proud Americans, or did they say
this is the epitome of what we were just talking about. These were individual guys. Half of these guys taught themselves to read. Half of these guys were slaves, and 5 years later they're sitting in Congress. And as slaves, it was a capital offense to learn to read. So these guys in 5 years, and I'll guarantee you read their speeches and records of Congress, you better have a dictionary and a thesaurus in both hands because you want to understand the language they use. It is so brilliant what these guys did. But
were they there to say the white man is bad and the America is bad?
No. And these guys were Richard Allen. Let me go back here. Richard Allen had been in slavery. Richard Allen was in slavery, and he held no bitterness at all. He says God would not allow bitterness even in Joseph when he was in prison.